Yes, I am. Here we go. Okay. Okay, so as you know, this is the Glow Wellbeing Hub. And if you can't hear me, just let me know. And the topic is, as everybody knows, bereavement and dealing with bereavement effectively. Okay. This is being run by Giving Love Others Want Limited. And the mission statement is, Giving Love Others Want is a network which aims to empower and support an individual's well-being. Glow will be running events like this, which aims to increase an individual's knowledge and life skills, as well as provide a platform for professionals and business owners to share knowledge within the ethos of each one teach one. Okay, so as said before, obviously we'll be recording this. If you're not comfortable with that, as I said, you know, obviously turn off your video. And just to reiterate the fact that we will be using this in the future, the recording, not limited to, say, Instagram, Facebook, okay? And it's purely, like I said, just so that others can experience what Glow offers as a support network. Everybody's doing really great. The mics are off, and that's just to limit background noise. Also, I really want people to be asking questions, but because we've got, you know, time restrictions, if you could write them in the chat, and then what we'll do is when we get to the question section, we'll endeavour to obviously answer as much as we can. If we can't, then we don't mind actually speaking to you personally afterwards, or obviously email us, and our email address will be available and all those contact details. Also, we encourage, because we want people to be able to just be open and share, we, you know, in regards to confidentiality, do not disclose anyone's names or information that you hear on the video chat outside this forum to ensure no breach of confidentiality. Okay, so bereavement. Everyone will experience a type of loss. So the most practical one is obviously death. The severity of the loss will be determined by the quality of the relationship and the circumstances of the situation which they have encountered the loss. So for example, someone who loses a partner, a child, a parent will be different from someone who loses, say, a job, loss of mobility, or loss of relationship. However, it's so important to know that all of these losses are relevant, and all of these losses will result in an individual experiencing the cycle of grief. The effects of grief and loss. Well, grief is a natural reaction to someone losing someone we care about or something. However, if left unprocessed, loss can cause deep emotional scars and mental health problems. And this is the reason why we've put this on today, because we acknowledge that, you know, it's so important we're going to go through this, but it's so important that we go through it the right way. And within our each one teach one ethos, it's so important that we share the tools that we collected along the way, because I've experienced grief, and obviously so has Rose. So there's stages of grief.
Sorry to interrupt, Chantel.
Yeah.
I can't see your screen, darling. You've not shared it.
Oh, okay, hang on. Thanks, Jamie Lee.
You're welcome.
Right, let me get off of this, hang on. Sorry about that, everyone. You must be thinking, what's she doing? Right, okay, so. Right, can everybody see it now?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Great. Let me let some more people in. Okay, so just to show you what I was going through, I won't go through it again because right. So these are the PowerPoint I was going through, yeah? And I've got up to the stages of grief. Is everybody good? Yeah? Okay, so the stages of grief, loss, and bereavement. So there's believed to be a cycle and specific stages that we go through when we go through bereavement. And it's obviously really important that we understand which stage and obviously manage these effectively. So the first being shock is a typical initial response to bereavement, as said there, as is disbelief. You may feel numb or paralyzed at this time. Forgive me if I stop through it because I'm just trying to let people in. I'm getting my head around this thing. And then denial normally follows. For example, you might try to convince yourself nothing has changed, reenact activities such as making a drink for your loved one, etc. Anger and even guilt may then be felt, which is another stage. These emotions can manifest in a range of ways, from blaming others to having emotional mood swings. The next stage is bargaining, and it states that to cope with a loss, sometimes we find ourselves promising that we'll live better lives. And it's got an example on here that a child may promise to be tidier. Just get back together, mum and dad, because I'll be tidy, I'll stop arguing with their siblings. And that's the bargaining stage. Then depression, it's quite a popular stage. Period of depression may follow, including symptoms such as insomnia, irritability, loss of appetite, and social withdrawal. You may experience a loss of purpose as well. And then finally, we have the acceptance stage. And this is thought to be the stage where everything, your thoughts become less, maybe anger's less, the shock's gone, the depression's less. And that's where you actually start to rebuild your energy and motivation. Now, with all these stages, they're reoccurring. So, my experience, you feel anger one day, a different, you may experience a change in your life that you think, oh, I wish my mum or dad or partner or, wish they could have experienced that with me. And then here comes the anger again, and it's just obviously how you deal with that, which determines how long you remain in that stage. While denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance are commonly understood as a stage of grief, Dr. Kubler-Ross talks about 7 stages of grief model, and these include shock, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, testing, and acceptance. Right, so the symptoms of grief. Anybody who has experienced grief, you feel numb, you have an overwhelming sadness, tiredness and exhaustion, insomnia, loss of appetite, anger, either towards the person you've lost or the reason for your loss, and guilt. So that was just to sort of like set the foundation for obviously Rose's talk, which is going to come next. It's so important that we understand these stages and understand what bereavement's all about, because if we don't, we can't then deal with it effectively. And what Rose is going to do today is she's going to share with us briefly, what she went through. And then she's going to share with us how she now manages it effectively. Okay, so Rose, if you can. Hi. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for joining us this evening. It's so good to see so many of you. So hopefully by the end of this, we would all have got something out of it.
Okay, so as said before, just to introduce Rose, she is the director and co-founder of Glow. And it's so great that she's actually willing to share her experience today. So Rose, if you can just briefly share your experience of bereavement, what happened?
Yeah. Okay. So for me, my bereavement started, I'd say, about 35 years ago. It was now, yeah, well, almost 36 years, but 35 years ago. I was 21, okay, and had two small children, one of 6 months and one of 18 months. And those two children were murdered by their own father. So which left me feeling, if I explain the feeling, if I try and explain the feeling, because I want you to appreciate that I'm not there in that, so it was kind of a struggle for me to go back almost. So in that moment, it felt as if somebody had gone inside of me, ripped out my heart, but they had omitted to give me any pain relief, explain to me what the pain was going to be like, and anything like that. So it was just literally like a very, very raw moment, you know. And I think at that time, I just I don't know, I was numb. I had no feelings, basically. As I said, the pain was too excruciating for me to even be able to think about anything else. It was just horrific. There's many words that you can use for it, but none of them would sum up just how horrific it was. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I mean, just the thought of losing, I've got 4 children, and just the thought of losing my children in that horrific way, it's hard to even fathom it. So what would you say the stages were that, you know, because obviously we've discussed the stages of grief. What are the prominent ones that you went through? Can you share that with us?
For me, the first initial shock stage for me was shock. It was when the police arrived and stood there and explained that your children are dead. That's the word that sticks out to me. Your children are dead. And I think at that moment, my whole body from head to toe just went completely numb. I could hear the police and members of my family talking and discussing and whatsoever, but it was as if I was outside of that, because I couldn't speak. I was literally just frozen. And I think by then, I think they might have recognized, but my body was automatically shutting down because it just couldn't function.
Yeah. What other stages do you feel that came to, do you know what I mean? What really stood out?
There was anger. There was a feeling of loneliness. There was depression, suicidal thoughts, isolation, blame, emptiness, moving on. How do I move on from this was one of them. I went into the protective mode, you know, to protect myself. So there's many different stages that I went through, and I will explain some of them as we go on. But there's lots of, each bereavement, if we can appreciate, is different. So I'm just explaining what it was like for me to have lost the children and what stages I went through as best I can.
Can you talk a bit, well, you're doing well, can you talk a bit more about the depression side? Like, because that would link to the shock, wouldn't it? The shock and a bit of the anger and...
No, so the shock was the initial stage, as I said. But after that, I went straight into anger. I was angry. I was angry at the person who had killed my children. I was angry at the police who had taken so long. I was angry at myself. I was angry, I think at some point over the first few years, I would honestly say that I was angry at everybody.
Yeah.
And it would just take a trigger and I would get angry at whatever, sometimes for no apparent reason. I was in a mess, basically. And sometimes, as much as I wanted people to talk to me, there was times when just don't talk to me, just leave me alone and things like that, because there's many stages to anger, but I think there's a very dangerous place in anger, because that's the place that makes you do things. And if not controlled, that's when we literally get out of control. And you hear so many stories, but that's when people will go and harm other people or do something or harm themselves because they're that angry.
Yeah. And I guess it's not dealing with that anger that can then cause your emotional regulation to be out of sync. So then you see people be angry about little things and losing it, and you just think, well, what's that about? Do you know what I mean? So it's so important. How would you say you work to manage the anger?
For me, I learned to question myself.
Okay.
And I learned to work through the anger. So I learned to think about what it was that I was being angry about. I then would move on to working through it, ask myself questions. Do I need to be angry about this? And I learned the counting game, and counting is amazing because by counting, I mean, that always helped me. Even today I use that, and that helps me to stay in a calm place. No matter what thing would make me angry today, I go straight to I use my thought process to get that anger under control, and then I use the counting process. And once I've counted, and sometimes I don't even get very far in the counting, it calms me right down, and then I think about the situation, and then it's like, and actually, I don't even know why I was angry about that, or do I need to be angry about that? So along the years, as I was going through many other emotions, I learned to handle it in that way.
Yeah. We've got Shauna's got a hand up. Do you want to take your mic off, Shauna?
Yeah, sorry. Good evening, all. So, Rose, you're doing really, really well, but I just wanted to ask you two things, if you don't mind, because you spoke a lot about how you managed in the first initial feelings and responses to what you'd endured, but you did quite a lot yourself, and I just wanted to know where you first sought help, where the first form of help came from, so that obviously this helps with people going forward as well.
Yes. So it's as I said, it's quite difficult for me because to really explain it, because as I said, I had to go back because when I got into that place, which is a place that I never recognized that I would ever be in, and never wish it on my worst enemy. When I was in that place, the only thing I had to hold on to was God. And I know that a lot of people don't have that mechanism, right? But that's what I had. That's what I used most of the time. For God became my friend, basically. So a lot of the times I use that. However, as I moved on, I then learned to seek outside of that. So then I used counseling, and I used other agencies and other different means of gaining help. I used my family a lot of the time. I learned to keep my family close, and I learned to I learned to be able to communicate better, because I recognize that I need to communicate, because if I don't say how I'm feeling, then nobody's going to know. Because trust me, if you looked at me, okay, most times I was matter of fact, you'd think I was okay, but I was dying inside, literally.
Yeah. Oh, okay. It's just interesting you said that, that you saw obviously God first, which is amazing that you have faith, because I think without faith a lot of us wouldn't manage anyway. And then you said you sought counselors and stuff like that, so it's just good to know that there were people that you could contact and who were able to help you with the feelings. But my second question was, how did you know you were in shock? Did someone tell you, or did you know?
I think looking back, I know I was in shock because I just couldn't function. I just literally, it was like, it's like a surreal moment. It's like, did I really hear that? Am I really in this house hearing this information? Are they really saying that? But I couldn't speak. I couldn't get no words out, nothing. And as I said, I could hear the police talking to my family and discussing and saying all sorts of things. And I could even hear them saying, we need to sedate her. We need to sedate her. And I wanted to say to them, I don't want to be sedated, thank you very much. But I couldn't speak. I couldn't speak. I couldn't get out what I really wanted to say, because my whole body literally froze. I wasn't like a normal person. I just stood there, frozen.
Okay, thank you for that. It's just because as someone who's experienced grief, in not the same ways as yourself, but when I was in shock, I didn't know that I was in shock, and I was told that by a counsellor. So I was doing things and reacting to the situation, but didn't actually know that was my position. And that was the first stage of grief. So I just wondered how you knew. Obviously, you know, the news would have been ultimately frightening, but I just wondered if someone actually put it into place for you and said, this is what you're going through now, this is what you'll go through next, this is what you're going through now, and compartmentalize.
I would have loved that.
For you.
But I didn't have none of that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And I think it's really important to remember, there's not a specific order to it. So it doesn't just go from one to the next in terms of, oh, I'm going to experience shock, then anger. I think shock initially, obviously that would start, but all the others, I guess it's dependent on the situation. Yvette, you had your hand up. You still got mute.
You're on mute.
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to say that as well, Chantel. Thanks very much, Rose, for sharing that. It's not a linear process, the grieving process, that people go in and out of it. Yeah. And especially you think about the anniversary of the death of a loved one. For some people as well, at that time, they're back in the depression for a lot of people, especially the first anniversaries. Yeah.
Thank you, Yvette. Just so you know, Yvette's a counsellor who's part of Glow. And also Shauna is part of Glow as well, who's asking questions. Okay, Rose. So was there any other?
Yeah, so from there was after like a bit of time went on and things like that, it was the overwhelming feeling of loneliness. You have to imagine that I literally went from a mother of 2 beautiful babies to a mother of none, you know, and that for me was such a lonely place. But as I said, at that time, I had God by then. So, but it didn't stop the loneliness altogether. I felt alone. I would look at other people with their children, and the only thing I could think about is, where's my children? And then that's why I said that some of these emotions, they entangle one another, because although I was gaining strength in dealing with the anger, it then came to a point where while I'm feeling lonely and I'm thinking about different things, I then become angry again, because where's my children? And you ask yourself a lot of questions. But that overwhelming feeling of loneliness was like you're empty inside. It's really hard to explain it, but you just feel lonely. You just feel like you're the only person in the world, and you don't want to be alone. But I can explain how I learned to deal with this particular situation.
Please.
I learned to surround myself, as I said, with my family. We talked a lot. I surrounded myself with friends. I literally threw myself into doing work and whatsoever. Some of this was to, you'd say, not cover up the pain, but it helped me to get, while I was gaining ground, it helped me to gain ground by having people around rather than being on my own. Apart from when it came at night, you're obviously, on your own. But that's what I use that mechanism to get through that. And I can say that the loneliness does go away after a while. You do get.
So is it anyone you have around you, or is it specific?
No, you have to be really specific about this, because trust me, there'll be times when there was times when I only wanted one specific person around me, which was my brother, and he just used to bring that kind of comfort. And then there was a time when I wanted lots of people around me, because I had a sense that I wanted a lot of noise around me. And then there was times when I didn't want any noise, and all sorts of different things to try and get over that stage of loneliness.
I really do feel it's really important, as you've said, because some people can actually make it worse for you, especially if you have somebody say, "Why aren't you over that yet?" Or, you know, "Come on." Do you know what I mean? That sort of thing, it's not helpful. But also to have people around you who are equipped to deal with it. personally, I don't know if you had anyone around you, Rose, who actually went through grief at that time, had actually lost, and you're able to relate with them.
You know what? As I look back, I think for us as a family, that was the first time we had to deal with any type of grief in that magnitude.
Yeah.
And then because obviously I was 21, so you're at a young age, so your friends are young and your family's young, you know, because my mum would have still been young. So there wasn't really anybody around that I can remember that was able to, at that stage, to help me. As the years went on, as I said, I was able to go outside and get help from counsellors and things like that. But at that initial stage, there was nothing. It was just me suffering and my family trying to help as best they can, friends trying to help as best as they can.
Okay. So what advice would you give anyone who, because obviously we're in a situation where there's COVID-19, there's a lot of people losing family members, friends, colleagues. What advice would you give those people right now who are encountering that?
What I would say to them is talk to somebody. Find somebody, be it a family member, be it a friend you can confide in, even if it is a counsellor, if it is even somebody from an agency that doesn't know. Sometimes it's easier to speak to people that don't really know you, because you kind of like feel like they don't know anything, so all the information they've got is what I'm going to tell them now. But definitely find somebody that you can talk to, because if you don't talk, you can't get help. Nobody actually knows. And like I said, for most times, like if I talk about the if I go into the depression stage, which is a really hard stage, I would say out of all the different emotions that I felt, the depression was the worst, because the depression left me, there was days where I would honestly say I literally just existed. So if they were doing a survey or whatsoever to say how many people are here, they would count me in that number, because I existed, because I was alive, but I was dying, and all I wanted to do was die. I have a thing nowadays, when I hear somebody saying that they're depressed, I jump, because I'm thinking, hold on a minute, are they depressed, or are they just stressed, or is something going on? Because let me tell you, when you are actually depressed, it's a very dark place. It's a place where nobody would ever want to visit. I didn't sleep, night turned into day, and I went from, I didn't want to eat, I didn't want to sleep, I didn't want to get washed, I didn't want to, my hair was long then, I didn't want to brush my hair, didn't want to shower, didn't want to do anything. I literally just sat there, sometimes just yearning, you know, for my kids, sometimes just I just wanted to get off of this earth, to be fair. That's the only way I can put it. The depth of it was that bad, so dark and deep, that I just used to make plans on what I was going to do. But what took me out of that, what I used to get out of that, was the fact, in the end, it was actually the kids. Because I had this moment where I wanted to do it for the kids, so it gave me kind of like a purpose. So then, after so many months and whatsoever, I now had a reason to get up. Very small reason, but I had a reason to get up, to get washed, to get dressed, to function a little bit again. But what I would say is that although I was functioning a little bit, I was still kind of like planning my suicidal escape. So when I speak to people, because I speak to a lot of people on the basis with bereavement, and one of the things I say to them is, not necessarily to the person who's suffering depression, but to those who are around. And I say to them, be mindful, because I looked okay. Because as I said, I got to the stage where I was dressing myself, getting ready, you can put a smile on, you can do whatever and whatsoever. But I was planning my escape. I was planning how I was going to get to leave this earth. And I always say to those who have family members that are suffering with depression, I say to them, if they're not talking about suicide, but you can see little traits, that's when you need to be careful. Because somebody who's going to commit suicide and is really serious about it doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
But those who are saying it and saying, oh, I just feel like killing myself, I just feel like committing suicide, the chances are they're not going to do it, but they're asking for help. But when you don't hear those kinds of conversations and that person is acting like everything's okay, and we act when we're like that as a matter of fact, everything is fine. Yes, of course I am. And you put the smile on and whatever. But I was planning my escape. I was looking for the opportunity. And again, as I said, I became angry because my family wouldn't leave me alone. There was always somebody there. So that made me angry because I wanted them to leave me so that I could commit the suicide, but they wouldn't. So, you know, there's different times, but that's when you need to look out for somebody who is depressed.
Yeah. Just mindful of the time. So I just want to give anybody the opportunity to ask Rose questions at this point. If there's anything, Bernard, you could just put your hand up, or because I've noticed nothing's gone on the side screen. So yeah, if there's any questions, if not, it's fine. But this is your opportunity to ask her some questions if she hasn't covered anything.
Shauna's got a hand up. Go ahead, Shauna.
Typical, I've always got my hand up. No. So yeah, thank you again for sharing. So again, two things. So first things first, and this goes to both Chantel and you, Rose. More so Rose, what do you think would be the first port of call for someone? Where can someone go if they've gone at the hands of, you know, bereavement or loss even of themselves, a side of themselves that they never thought they'd lose? What do you think at the first place is that you should have went to or could have went to if you had the option?
If I had the option, looking back now, I think I'm not saying put God aside, but taking him out of the picture because he was always there, but looking at life itself, I would say I would have found a counsellor. I would have found somebody outside of my family unit that I could speak to. I would have even tried to find a friend that I could confide in, somebody who I trusted to be able to tell how I was really feeling, because I think it was a bit hard for my family because they were so consumed with everything that was going on. And sometimes not knowingly, but your family can be a bit spiteful, not knowing that they're being spiteful because they're like, come on now, it's been XYZ time, almost as if, are you not over this? But some of those areas are hard to get out of. So I would definitely have gone outside to seek some counselling or to find somebody that I could confide in at that time.
Okay, so part B then of that one, Chantel, is where can Glow step in to help people who may be at loss? First of all, with a person or from people, but number two, for, like I say, a part of themselves, because often that's not spoken about. We speak a lot about loss of people, which is evident, but sometimes we don't really speak about what happens when we lose ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And also we don't speak, you know, when we're that strong person, you know, when we're that person that always gets through, always achieves, always, you know, seems to get over stuff. And then suddenly you're hit with something that is like, oh gosh, you know, I really can't handle this. People are so used to you coping that's when isolation starts. That's when you start to feel like, what's going on? And sometimes you don't have the strength to find that counsellor or to find that specific individual because you're so used to coping. And that's where my passion for Glow came. You know, you can literally come to Glow or to an organisation like Glow who will just sit you down and say, look, what's going on? And literally help you to just talk everything through and do the work for you. So if you need a counsellor, okay, well, let's do a plan then. You know, we feel like, you know, obviously you've lost somebody, let's start there. Because a lot of the times we don't deal with the deep rooted issues and we're just firefighting with the external stuff. but really we need to deal with that deep rooted issue, because that's the cause of all the other issues. So, you know, that sort of functioning within an organization like Glow is where obviously you would come, be with a life coach. There's so many different organizations apart. You know, we've got many members on here now, counselors, psychologists, so many different people that can help, you know, to actually help you get yourself back. And I think that's really important. You know, it's about us living and not surviving. And a lot of us are still surviving because we've had historic stuff happen and we've just buried it. And my thing is, my passion is to see people live again, to see people be effective again. So I would say that if that was me, when I lost my mom, when I, you know, even 15 years of marriage, when that went down the drain, I would have ran to somewhere like Glow and said, you know what, not used to this happening to me, but where do I start? And I think that's really important, because it's not what you go through, it's how you go through it. I'm mindful that we've got a hand up from Paul.
Yeah.
Paul, do you want to
It's not Paul Maddox, it's Marilyn. It's Pastor Marilyn. Before you speak to Pastor Marilyn, just want to say, because it reiterates what I said, Jamie Lee said, I think something that is helpful is the idea that everyone would experience loss, particularly at this time. This could be through death, but it could be loss of freedom due to the lockdown, or a loss of friends for our children not attending school. It's helpful to know the stages. So I think before we close as well, just make sure you reiterate, if you can, for us, the stages once more, and also what would happen when we first contact Glow. So if anybody suffers bereavement, what we first do and what we first will receive from you. Go ahead, Marilyn.
I'm sorry, I'm not video worthy today, so you'll hopefully. So the story of Rose is actually very moving. You know, I'm thinking that it's not the order that life should be. You never lose your children, you know, before it's like your parents, there's an order. So I understand that would have been really, really hard. I've lost a sister-in-law to suicide. I lost a father through murder, and I've lost my mother and some friends along the way. And it is, each one brought different emotions, obviously, they will do. But one of the things I found was that at times, I felt people ran away from my grief, almost as if they couldn't deal with me grieving, because, you know, Marilyn is a tough one, she'll bounce back, she'll be fine. So what I found is people ran away. And so I think with the organization, with Glow and all the other people, professionals on here, this is where you can be in grief and people aren't going to run away from you. They're going to allow you to grieve. They're going to allow you to express. They're going to allow you to do certain things, but with the ultimate goal of helping you to help yourself. So one of the things I really, and even with our mentoring company that we have, we just think we just stay for the long haul. It's people's grief, and we're not going to run away from people's grief. We're going to stick by them. I'm from a small family. I don't have a big family. So I don't have, let me sit with my parents or my brother or this or that. I don't have a big family. So for me, it was an isolating moment. But there was, and people I thought that should have been there weren't there because they ran away from my grief. And it was almost as their grief of me grieving was greater than my grief. And so it was a very weird situation, a very weird place to be, and how you respond to that when you're out of your season, how you rekindle your friendships and how you move forward. And I think these things are quite key, because if you're not careful, you can be offended by that friend that you walked with for 14, 15 years, and all of a sudden you had that moment of grief that they could not be found. And so how I think the counselling, all these things that everybody on this platform offers is very, very key. I didn't have I had a pastor who wasn't quite sure how to deal with it, and wasn't, you know, it was very difficult. So these forums are very, very good, but to always maintain, if we're going to help someone, help them all the way. Don't run away from their grief.
I think that's a very good point, Marilyn, because one of the things that does happen even now, and what we have to be mindful, even with people suffering with different losses through this pandemic, is the fact that one of the reasons why people do run away, like you're talking about, is most times because they have suffered a bereavement of some sort, but it's not dealt with. So it's like when they hear about your bereavement, they can't actually help you or be with you because it brings back and takes them to the place of the bereavement that they've suffered. So what we're trying to do with Glow is is from our heart. So what it is from us, the passion is that we recognize these things and we want people to be whole. Because to be whole, everything has to be dealt with, which is why we take the stages. So we would initially talk to somebody. I'm not a counselor, so I can coach you through many things. I can talk to you about many things. I've suffered the loss of children. I've suffered the loss of my mom, my dad, stepdad, loads of different losses, but I'm not a counselor. So I would be talking based on what I have been through. And then it would be what it fits you. So this is where Glow would pass that individual over to a counselor or over to a coach in that area, or over to an agency that can best help that person. But what we're saying at Glow is that there's help for everybody. So it's not a case of that we're going to pick you up here, what you've got to say, and think, oh, can't deal with that. We can deal with any circumstance because we have the backing of many other different agencies, counselors, and different people that can help.
Thank you.
Can I say something as well? So would it be right to say that with Glow, you're being referred to the relevant support service that you guys partner with, or we partner with, but that, can we say that somebody would be there within the Glow or from the Glow network to support you along the way, or hold your hand along the way to make sure that you are getting the service that you require?
Yes, so we would do the checkups. We would make sure that wherever we've placed you, we would always feedback from that person to see how the individual's doing, and we would go all the way until that person, if it was a case that they needed to get back into society, we would make sure that they're getting back into society, but not how they were, still with what the issue was, but that the issue's been dealt with and then they move on. So we would be there all the way through the whole process.
It's all about empowering people to engage with other services, because I think sometimes there's a bit of a stigma, or just don't know and don't trust. So I think having people on board as part of Glow, having businesses, having professionals, enables those people to show their face and show the face to actually that business or that specific thing, so that at least then they've got a point of contact, so that they're not just going out there and seeing the million counselling services or the million other services that are out there, but we've actually got people on board that we can actually, like Rose said, actually link up. And also what we would do an initial assessment where we would set a plan, and then we'd review that throughout the year to make sure that that person's getting the services that they require at that time, because things change as well. Okay.
Keisha has her hand up. Sorry to interrupt. I believe Xanthia had your hand up before. I'm not sure if you still want to raise a question, but Keisha has it up now.
Oh no, I was clapping. I was agreeing with what someone said. Yeah. I'm going to mute myself again. But
okay. Just before we go to Keisha, James has said, is it fair to say Glow will act as a support system? Yes. That's exactly what it would act as. Okay, and then Keisha.
Hello.
Hiya.
Well, there's been a lot of fantastic information here tonight. One question: would Glow be offering like a group session? So if there's been grief within a family sort of setting where it's a group as opposed to one, would Glow be offering that sort of service?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, within that family unit, there's going to be different ages, and obviously, even though group is suffered collectively, a lot of the time, due to the different age groups and different levels of experiences and the different coping mechanisms, we sometimes have to sort of work with that individually, but we can still bring that together. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yes, I understand that. And is it correct to say that like within a group setting, there's always one individual who carries everyone else's, who bears everyone or carries everyone else's grief, or try to be you know, that sort of support network? I'm asking because having been through grief and experiencing depression through loss of a child, well, I found that in the when I lost the first one, I did not have time to grieve. And so, because I was supporting everyone else, when it happened the second time, it was like, whatever, every man for themselves, I don't care. Not that I didn't, but at that point, I started to grieve the one that I delayed. It hit me like a ton of bricks. And Chantal, you know about that, because I found that you were that person who recognized what was going on and said, you need to come, and you took me away, because it was like I did well, I did fantastically first time around, and second time around it was, as Rose said, you know, I was like a zombie. I didn't want to do anything. I couldn't eat. I didn't have appetite. I just wanted to lay in my bed. And, you know, I realized that even after a year or so ago, I was feeling depressed and not knowing why, only to realize it was the anniversary. Each year it gets better, yes. But it's like you're feeling a bit off and you don't know why it is. And not having had counseling or anything, you know, dealing with things by yourself, or if you've had someone that you're able to talk to, they leave you, you know, if they check on you, which Chantal was such a good support network. Thank you, Shan. You know, you don't have to, don't do anything, you know. She let me be until I was able to get up again and be myself and face people, because sometimes, as someone did say, people sometimes assume, oh well, it's time, but you've been, it's not the first time, and or they'll make assumptions, and that's like another knife in your chest. So I love what you're doing. Thank you very much.
That's fantastic, Keisha. And this is one of the reasons why, one of the things that I would really say, and really say to each and every individual, whether it's a job, a family member, a situation, any type of loss, it is so important to do the grieving process. Because if you go through the grieving process, as you would have heard me say before, from going through that bad grieving process, when I got to other times to grieve, I had things in place. So when the anger came, when the shock came, when the blame game came, I had things in place now. Because I had been through all of those things, I now could pull on all of those things that I had learned along the way from that grief, and it would help me to any other grief. But if you don't grieve properly in the first instance, you just go from one to the other, not really knowing what is going on. When that anger comes, when that isolation period comes, when you don't know how to move on from a situation, it really stems from something that you faced but not dealt with. So it's really, really important. That's what I would leave with anybody today. Make sure you find the things that's needed, the people and whatsoever. And as I say, I put my hands up, Glow is there. My heart is to help individuals who are suffering, to just make it a bit easier for them, so that maybe they don't have to suffer every single thing that I did within my grieving process. That's what Glow is there for, as a platform to help, to point out to other places, things that I didn't have, but that are out there now that we can have. That's what I would say.
Chantal, you still got your mic on.
Yeah, just realised. I would add to that and say that it's so important to, a lot of us are numb because we've buried stuff and we're no longer feeling, and we're self-medicating, whether it's with extra food or drink, or, you know, we're getting ourselves into these sort of habitual cycles where that's how we cope. And I'd really encourage you to flow with the grief process. If you feel angry, there's nothing wrong with feeling angry. It's what you do in that anger. You know, there's nothing wrong with feeling lonely. It's what you do in that loneliness. So it's about, when your body tells you that you're feeling something, go with it. Because the more you bury it, the more you delay it, then when the next thing comes, it's just building on top of that, like Rose said. It just keeps piling on top. And then it just becomes a whole load of mess, when if you had dealt with that first thing, and it's not easy. And I don't think there's ever a time when you think, oh yeah, I'm ready to deal with it now, because it's pain, and pain is not easy. But when you know the stages, and like Shauna was saying, I should go through that again, you know, anger, isolation, all these different things, bargaining, all the different stages. When you have an understanding of that, you can then know, okay, I know what's happening here. What do I need to do to help me cope? Is it self-talk I need? You know, is it support I need? Is it something I need to talk to? And the more you then see things work, the more you can pull on that that skill or that technique when something else happens. And you can say, well, that worked before, so let me try that again. That worked before, let me try that again. Do you know what I mean? And that's how you then build up a way of coping that is healthy, as opposed to self-medicating and not really dealing with the rooted issue.
Tessa has her hand up.
Okay. Tessa?
Hi everyone.
Hi.
Yeah, oh, I didn't know what I was going to say now. It's off the back end of what, is it Keisha?
Yeah.
Yeah, was saying, she said that she experiences 2 losses that was similar because it was babies. And she said about the first one, she kind of took care of everybody. But the second time she realised, you know, I've got to take care of myself. So my situation, where I've experienced a lot of loss in the last couple of years, but the 2 significant losses for me was like my nan and granddad 6 weeks apart, and they were the ones that raised me. And because I've never really experienced bereavement that close before, it has knocked me for 6. And I don't know whether I'm coming or going. I'm in bed for days. I'm not really I feel like a rubbish mum. I haven't got back to work yet. I just don't. I've lost my strength. I've lost myself. And I think listening to all you, like, it's like there's some kind of, it comes to a point where there's a step-by-step process or something. But I feel like I don't even know where to begin. I feel like I'm in a pit. I'm in a dark pit, and I don't know how to make sense of this pain. I don't know how to make sense of it all. And it's like, it comes out in different forms, sometimes anger, sometimes, you know, I have a few days where I'm laughing about a few things, but most of the time I'm just not myself. I feel like I've lost myself and I don't know where to start, basically. So that's that.
Well, that's what we're here for. We're here to help individuals who, through loss, as you say, you've had your losses, and it does take away from you, because, as I said, some losses will literally rip you to shreds, which I think if you sit down and think about it, that's what's happening now, because there's so many different emotions that's happening at the same time. It's hard, I think, for you to pinpoint one of them. Which one do I deal with first? So I think for yourself, it's a case of come and see us, come and see Glow. Let us put you on one of our step programs, and let us discuss with you exactly. You'll be able to talk to us about what has taken place, and then we'll be able to walk you through the steps, because you'll be able to tell us what emotion you're feeling at that time, because the emotions can be different. Because for me, it might have been shock first, but for you it might be something else, and shock might come later, blame might come later. But we can certainly help you to walk through, and as you walk through, you will, as I said before when I was speaking, you do gain strength. So you gain strength from the anger, so that's something that you don't now have to deal with. And then when it comes to the depression, where you feel that real low, when we walk through that, as I said, we'll be holding your hand literally. When we walk through that, then you'll find that you have almost like a stack of cards now. So when something else comes, even if it comes later, you can pull out one of your cards and say, right, I felt that emotion before, so let me have a look. Like I said before, I did a lot of talking to myself, analyzing and questioning myself. Why are you feeling like this? And as I said, the counting is amazing. So definitely come to us. We can talk to you afterwards and talk about getting you onto one of our step programs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Keisha, I'm just mindful of the time. If you quickly come, and then I'll just finish off.
You're muted.
I think Keisha's hand's still raised from before.
Was it just from before?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you the stages again. Excuse my background if you can hear kids. So I'm just going to show you the PowerPoint. I'm just going to go back to the stages because I know somebody actually wanted to see that. So we see shock here, which we've talked about quite a lot today. And obviously denial as well. There's anger. Also there's the bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. So how Glow will obviously help with this, like Rose said, is we'll obviously try and establish where you're at. You know, everybody's different. And although we've been through, I've been through my loss, she's been through her loss, everyone's different. And it doesn't mean that we're professionals, not at all. You know, it's about supporting you where you're at. And if I just quickly forward to, so the Glow process, so there's an online membership form, or you can email us and we can email that to you. You would meet with a coach via Zoom, obviously, within the current climate. We would establish the areas, like we said, what the individual needs, what support is needed in terms of, you know, professionals, and then guide them to create a plan through goal setting and obviously specific professionals identified to enable them to move forward. And then, like we mentioned before, we would have the review meetings to enable the individual to check progress by a life coach, etc. Yeah. So this stage here would be actually managed by life coaches. In terms of resources available, I don't want anybody to leave here today without having an understanding of what is available to them. Yes, Glow is here, but just I've kindly provided some other services. So there's Cruise Bereavement, there's the Black, African and Asian Therapy Network, Association of Christian Counsellors, Manor House Counselling, there's Harborough Christian Counselling Service, the Counselling Directory, so find a counsellor near you. Glow has its own professionals, so obviously Moments Mentoring, you heard Marilyn, she was speaking earlier. There's Amplify Life Coaching, there's Laura White Coaching as well, who's a life coach, because, you know, counsellors can help, mentors can help, life coaches can help you if you feel you lost yourself. They can help you to sort of structure, okay, what are the steps now that I need to achieve what I need to achieve? Because a lot of the times when things happen in our life, we then have barriers for us to actually achieve our purpose. So actually to work through that as well. And then I thank you for attending this Zoom session. I feel bereavement is massive, and I really reckon that we need to touch on this subject again, especially returning back to work after bereavement, which is a massive thing. You know, there's a lot of people at the moment that have suffered this bereavement and they're struggling to deal with that, but then they're chucked into a workplace and having to be around people who just don't know how to deal with it. So then it's causing even more issues. So I feel like that would be probably the next topic. And Rose, do you have anything that you want to say this time?
Not really, only to say, you know, once again, to thank everybody else for coming, and I hope that I was able to explain some things to you to give you kind of like a sense of what's out there, how bereavement can go, why it's so important for us to grieve through a bereavement and things like that. And as I said, Glow is there if you need help. Make the contact. As I said, it's really important to talk. If you don't talk, individuals, people don't know that you actually need help, but you could be looking good, but you could be dying inside. And it's important to voice that, so that there must be somebody that can help you. So thank you all once again for coming.
Yeah, thanks, Rose. Jessie's hand's up, I think.
Lorna's hands up.
But before Jessie goes, says what she needs to say, Jamie Lee was asking where this Zoom call will be available to watch again. I guess Instagram, Facebook, but I'll keep you informed anyway. And it would be good if you could refer it to others, because I believe it would be a benefit to them. Jessie, do you want to quickly ask your question?
Hi, Chantal, it's Nadine. I didn't
Nadine,
change too many different Zoom meetings, so apologies. I know that you're wrapping up, but I just wanted to, first of all, say thank you to Rose for sharing your experience, and the fact that I'm grateful that you're still around, because you know, your testimony to others is a strength to others. So thank you for that. Chantal, if I may, there's just a few points that I wanted just to pick up on that individuals have talked about. And I know you've said bereavement is quite a large area, and obviously something to come back to. We talked about the communication of not necessarily having the language yourself to articulate what it is that you're feeling, let alone to express to others how it is that you're feeling, and the expectations are then to naturally, or the assumption that they would then automatically understand. What we didn't touch on so much is the physical pain of bereavement. And Rose, you mentioned this, you talked about a pain in your chest. Sometimes people describe a pain in their tummy. And I guess, you know, for anybody else that's listening, it's important to not just recognise the emotional pain that's going on for you at that time, but also your physical pain as well. And then just lastly, Chantal, one thing that I think the question was asked, well, what can Glow do? And well, people may not be counsellors or specific services and whatnot. What they have is the experience that they've gone through, and they recognise what stages and process that they've gone through as well. I'm a great believer in the work that I do in validating where an individual is, and the readiness of that individual as well. You know, it's almost a world that the abnormal becomes the normal, because you don't know what the expectation is, you know, so you're sort of like mapping out as you go along. So I would, especially to, I think it was Tessa that bravely spoke about how she was feeling and where she's currently at, is not to judge yourself or have that expectation framework that you're operating in that has been also imposed on you, or to accept that for you. You know, it's okay to not feel normal, because the circumstances are not normal. So I would just encourage you to recognise your emotions, as Chantal has said, roll with the emotions, because that is the norm for you at this stage, and that's very, very valid. Thank you.
Can you just introduce yourself, Nadine? Can you just say who you are?
Just 1 minute, please. Sorry, Nadine Campbell-Fuller. I'm listed as Jessie on here.
And you're
Okay, sorry. I'm a forensic psychologist. I work really in the field of applied psychology within the prison service and the probation, mental health services, across the board really, different clients, different ages, different genders. And like Rose was saying, bereavement, you know, it cuts across so many different fields. And while we usually think about bereavement in the notion of loss of a loved one, that loss can come in different ways. Like Chantal, you mentioned the breakdown of a marriage or the separation of a partner. And it's usually that sense of something being imposed on the individual. And I think, if I'm honest, in my world, that's why it's so difficult to manage, because it's something that is imposed and being done to us. And there's no rule book of how you're meant to process and experience. So something that was really key was not just about how you get through the process, but I think, again, with Glow, it's about who you get through that process with.
And she's part of Glow as well.
Thank you, Chantal.
So, is there any further questions? I'm mindful that we've gone way over time, but I really hope that it's been really beneficial to everyone. And thank you so much for coming and be a part of this. And obviously share, when I do obviously share it online, share it to other people, because I really believe people will benefit. is there anything anybody else has got to say? Rose, you got anything else to say, or?
No, unless anybody's got any further questions that they need to ask now, you know, you can always send us questions in via the email or on Instagram, but unless anybody's got anything else that they need to ask now.
Just one from me, Rose, if you don't mind. And that was about the healing. You know, it's recognized that you're not where you are when you experienced this so many years ago, or maybe not that many years ago, but at that age. But where are you in this healing process now? Is it a total heal? Is that possible?
Yeah, so that's quite a good question, actually, because a lot of the time people actually look at me, and because I'm glowing, I hope, they think that I'm that all-round person. And I think they think that because of what I've been through, and because I recognize so many different emotions, when I meet upon somebody who's going through something, I'm able to help them. So they don't actually see me as somebody that's been through anything. So when I kind of like say to them, you know, well, this is what I've been through, their eyes pop out of their head. Because for me, that's why I said it was so hard for me to even do this when we decided to do bereavement, because I said to Chantal, actually, I'm totally healed from it. So I don't have any of those emotions that I felt then. That's why I can talk so freely, you know, because it's not that I'm forgetting that I did have those children or anything, but I'm not there at this time in my life. I'm there now to help other individuals. That's my passion, to be able to come out a lot quicker than what I did. Because it was many years before I come out. That's really important to say. So, but I want to help individuals to be able to not have to go through all of those emotions, especially getting to the stage of that deep, dark depression and then the suicide, because that is one of the places that, what if for myself, what if God didn't step in? None of you would know me. You would just hear about this woman that lost their children and whatsoever, and it will be just written off. But I thank God that I am here and I am able to help another individual. And that's how Glow was born. It was born out of the fact that I sat back. I have 2 children now, 27 and 24. And I sat back and I looked at myself in the mirror, I spoke about it, and I saw that I was glowing, and I saw how far I'd come. My last child had gone off to university, and I thought, you know what? It's time now for me to give back. So it's time now for me to help other individuals. And this is how the birth of Glow came about. So my heartbeat is to help as many people as possible to reach their full potential by not having to carry unnecessary burdens around with us while we try to have a life and to glow.
And Rose, I just want to add to that, because you said you don't want people to go through it, but everybody has to go through it. And I think what you meant is you don't want them to go through it alone, you know?
Alone, yeah.
You won't have to go through it alone. Yeah, because you have to, you know, you have to have your own experience, but it's the aloneness, you know, having to do that on your own without somebody else who can say, you know what, I got through it with this, why don't you try that? That means so much. And I think we've got another message. What's this message? Okay, some hearts. I just want to say this, and then because I think it's Doward has said something towards you, which is really lovely, Rose. So I'm just going to say this out, and then if anybody has anything else, let me know, or we'll come to a close, okay? So it says, big shout out to Auntie Rose. Just wanted to say I think you are one of the strongest people I know, and nobody would ever guess the depth and pain and suffering you've had to survive because of the bubbly, hilarious, and genuine, joyful soul that you are today. Your past experience is undeniable testament as to your inner strength, combined with the awesome power of God to carry us out of total darkness and into his light of love and comfort, fully encouraging. So that's nice to hear that. And then Keisha said, I totally agree. You would never have guessed the depth of loss, grief, and trauma that you would experience because you're always so jovial. Okay, so I thought I didn't want to lose that.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to do, everyone, is I'm going to put up, for those who don't know, I'm going to share screen this time. I'm going to put up the details. So we've got the Instagram, the email address. If you do feel you need support right now, the email address is there. And there's also the website. And I will be posting, as I usually do, on Insta and also Facebook to promote any further events. So thank you very much for coming. I'm going to stop sharing. And if that's it, I'll see you later. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank
you. Love you too.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Can you believe the prayer request is to God? As God leading the prayer tonight, this prayer.